3 o'clock. And calling a special meeting for May 16th to order. Because this is a special meeting, we will just be discussing the scope and intent of a potential district social media program. We expect this meeting to last for an hour or two and are currently estimating adjournment by 5 p.m. So with that, let's get started. Chris, would you like to take the balls?
Well, I just want to say a couple of things and then turn it over to John. When I came here, the question was, should we go on social media or shouldn't we? And I've been in organizations that have done both. And Commissioner Grant was one of the ones that was very much an advocate for we should be on social media. We should do it now. But I was aware of a lot of the drawbacks, things that when you're a public agency, you've got to be more careful about than if you're in a private agency or just a person. So Ann and John have both been working on, what would policies look like that would support this. And we've done a lot of, when I say we, Ann and John have done a lot of the work on what that would look like. And then the question comes back, okay, now we think we may have the guardrails set up. What is it exactly that you want us to do? And we can get it done. So with that, I want to turn it over to John. And,
sure. Thank you. We thought that instead of presenting you with the policy and the program that we designed, we thought we would raise the questions more broadly for you commissioners, and you tell us what you would like, and then we can tell you what the concerns might be from a legal or operational consideration. And then you can make the business decision, because most of these are business decisions with some legal protections to protect the district, the individuals, the employees, the public. And then we can design the program policies and procedures with kind of what your want out of this is. And we didn't want to presume what your goal was, but we can talk about what the issues might be. And some of them are maybe quite obvious, some of them aren't. I sent you over the weekend just a couple things, try not to overwhelm you with reading. There was something from about 15 years ago from the State Attorney General's Office for State Agencies that I thought provided some background on some of the issues the state was looking at 15 years ago. And then there's a more recent publication by the AG, AWC, MRSC that I kind of boiled down into topics for review that just to provide some framework for a discussion. And you may want to take it a different direction. It's your strategic plan that called for the social media program. But I tried to, how was the structure of this discussion, or where is this going to go? And so I thought I would put that together. I'll summarize some of the questions and then we can get into the discussion. Let you open the discussion, but what's your business purpose? What are you trying to achieve? Kind of the classic who, what, why, where questions. What are you trying to achieve? Where do you want to use this? Which social media? Who's going to be authorized to post on the district's account? Do you allow comment? How do we control, monitor comment? These will all be public records. We have a record retention system. What happens if it's violating our civil discourse policy? What do we do then? So all sorts of things. There becomes OPMA issues if you start participating in discussions collectively or inadvertently collectively. There's campaign limitations if you're using that, and it could be a campaign issue by using district facilities, and even linkage to incumbents are always at a disadvantage to a fresh candidate because you can't use district facilities and you're a commissioner. So there's always those kind of issues. Again, Public Records Act issues, tracking, and then more mundane of, legal notices. How do we what happens with a collective bargaining agreement? Are we limiting it? How do we not limit free speech, but limit the comments of employees when they're acting in the scope of employment? A lot of different things we need to work through in any kind of broad-based social media program. And so I guess I kind of outline that, and we can get to some more details as it comes up. But, so I try to put out that little 3-pager to just say good guide discussion. I hope that's helpful, but what are we trying to achieve and how do we want to achieve it? And then what are our limitations or concerns that might lead to limitations?
Great, John. Thank you. So, Commission, how do we want to proceed? It seems to me that the first question is the most important question. What are we trying to accomplish? So should we talk about that first?
I think we should. I mean, I wasn't here when you created the strategic plan. So I mean, I'd love to hear, more about what your purpose.
You want to take the
Yeah, so, we did our strategic plan and then we did budgeting after that last year. And in conversation with Chris, I thought that we could make a compelling business case for, investing resources in social media. In part because we have a lot of positions to fill over the next few years, and we had just come off a general manager search. And I think that hiring is really hard right now. And when people look to join an organization, they want to get some information about it, understand what the organization is like. And I think that social media is one tool that people use to kind of learn more about, what the flavor of an organization is like, and then I also think just showing our work. So I think that the PUD historically has done a lot of work that they haven't talked very much about. And I think while it's great to be humble, we also want to tell our story and make sure that people know that the government agencies serving them are, out there doing good work. That's probably cheaper than hiring like a public relations firm to, do, or, a communication person. So, and then, I also wanted to acknowledge too, that I actually think we already do have social media in the form of our YouTube channel. So, I think YouTube is a form of social media. Anne's done a really good job of maintaining that channel. And it seems like we do get hits every once in a while. Like some of them have, 20 or 30 views. I don't know what who those are from, but
Tens and tens of views.
yeah, we haven't gone viral yet, thank goodness. So, I think that's another thing where we could add to our website, follow us and put like a YouTube icon, and we sort of already have that channel as a social media channel. So I think that's kind of where I'm at, that it's really, again, just about telling our story. And I think we have done better with the press releases we've been doing recently. I also do have a lot of concerns about the comments. And I think way back when we had the Western students come and present, I think we did also get some examples of government social media channels that just say, not monitored 24/7, comments not enabled. Join us for our council or commission meeting on these days or whatever, if you want to comment to us. So, I don't necessarily think we need to have comments going, because it does seem like it can cause a lot of.
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
We don't have a communications director, so there's nobody to respond to except for maybe Anne or somebody in the office, and they have plenty to do all
Exactly.
day. So
Yeah.
you don't want to argue with people online and,
No.
so.
So that's kind of my download from where I'm coming from.
I held on to one thing that you said, tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
It is a good way to tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
I have two questions. Again, because I wasn't here for strategic planning. So we wouldn't be using it really for public interaction. We would disable comments.
I'd like to, but
Sure.
what I was thinking about is thinking about the objective that you identified. Just stick with that for a little bit and think about what resources we need to utilize to do that task of telling the story somewhat. Is YouTube sufficient?
No.
Yeah, I just was saying that I think we have one social media channel perhaps right now. And I think all of us are thinking that we might want to add another one, but I just wanted to bring that up, that we're putting information out into the world
Yeah.
through that channel
Yeah.
at this time.
I don't think the business meetings really tell our story though.
No.
Because and they're lacking in some sort of like appeal, right? Like people really want to see like a photograph with maybe a couple sentences, like you really have to keep it simple, in my opinion. And we run, I run a few different social media pages. YouTube is great as a social media channel for people that are interested in sort of the nuts and bolts or watching us make the sausage, as Chris would say. But
the meetings.
yeah, but most people don't want to watch anybody make the sausage. I did want to ask one other thing though, we don't have any sort of, we're looking towards having customers for a couple of different things, right? If electric, like in other areas, it's a great way to list outages. It's a great way to, those emergent type things that come up that we haven't experienced yet, but we, hopefully we will.
Where I was in Kentucky, we used Twitter and Facebook for our outage notification. And,
Yeah.
But we had 12,000 retail customers.
So many.
So it made a difference. I mean, there was if we didn't push it out on Twitter, we would get the phone calls coming in on our dispatcher who was trying to direct the electric crews. So there was a, really direct business case for wanting to do that.
Sure.
I have an observation I'd offer just the discussion so far, but I don't want to cut it off the commission discussion. So whenever
Jump in.
appropriate. Okay. I hear there's two different concepts that maybe would help us. When we say a social media program, that's broad and deep. But I hear, Commissioner Grant, I hear you speaking more of a communication plan.
Yeah.
How do we disseminate what we want to communicate, tell our story? That's more of a communication plan and a communication strategy, the outward communication without trying to
sending
a lot of interaction. And so when someone says a social media program, like it's in the strategic plan, it kind of opens the door for how do we use these platforms? Who can use the platforms? How do we moderate it? How do we control it, retain it? When does something limitations become a collective bargaining issue? There's just a host of issues that start raising when we have a broad and deep social media program or plan. But if we're talking about a communication plan, which is just a dissemination, the press release, we're doing this, to me, that's a much narrower endeavor of a communication.
Maybe a reasonable step, since we're going from not having much in this area. And it strikes me that one of the things that we collectively should develop is, what is our narrative? Meaning, just like we've developed a strategic plan. Perhaps we should spend some time thinking about what is a story that is simple, and you made an excellent point about this. It should be simple. What is a story that we want to convey? And the strategic plan in a way does tell that, but it says what we're what we're aspiring to do. But there's these things that happen. For example, this grant that we just got. So some way of carrying our narratives, here's, showing that we're working towards these goals, and here's some lovely things that are happening as a result of that, or here's some disappointments that are happening as a result of pursuing this strategic plan. So I think maybe the strategic plan is very helpful in that regard, but maybe what we should do is have some kind of a document which is our narrative that is not like the strategic plan. I mean, it's not anywhere near in stone, but it's a collection of what we're conveying through our social media.
Does anybody think that maybe it's just me romanticizing it, but the story of PUDs in Washington State it's a pretty cool story, right? It's a pretty beautiful story. The very first ballot initiative, right? It's a great, I would love to add some historical context. People in Whatcom County, unless you've lived in an area where you were served by a PUD, a lot of people don't even know who we are, what we do, why we exist. When I told people I was running for PUD, they were like, oh, can you check my water, monitor? But like, just, they don't understand what a PUD does. I mean, I think telling our story begins with like who we are, the historical context, who we are, what we can offer. And
When you describe that, you know what I think of?
huh,
I think of, I don't know if you guys have been exposed to graphic novels.
yeah, I love that.
It's almost like our graphic novel that
Yeah,
we're on this page and then we keep adding pages, like an album.
yeah.
We do have several pages on our website
And
that
it's so
talks about
cool.
our history and what we've done in the past, what we're doing currently.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about putting something like that on social media, what's your idea?
Yeah, so I don't think people surf websites. Like you can type some, if you're interested in like looking up the PUD, you can type it up and like, find a drop down and find the history. It's great that it's there, but I think to capture a larger audience, you put it out there socially. You can even drive people to the website by linking it, which is great. So you're right. There's a lot of really good information that we already exists, and we would just highlight that on a page.
Yeah, I mean, one thought I'm having too is I feel like the three of us, this commission spends a lot of time. I mean, we're pretty engaged too, right? So, I think of like, I'm in the Tri-Cities for an Energy Northwest meeting. It'd be great if I could like snap a picture of me with some other commissioner. I don't think anyone in Whatcom County has any idea that we're, the three of us were in Olympia during the legislative session advocating for, priority bills for Waputa. When you were talking about the history, like taking a picture of Dan Baggerly presenting on the history of PUDs, like, did you know that this, or that, why? So I actually think that a lot of the content could be captured through commissioners. And I mean, I think, after you were elected, when we were allowed to talk to each other, outside of, you were talking about, oh, well, there's all these a lot of elected officials have their own Facebook pages and post all the time. And, we're very by the book. And so I think, John, you've cautioned us around having our own social media, but I also just like making sure the community knows that we're doing our job representing them. Like, again, I'm going to the Tri-Cities next week to learn about the Columbia River Generating Station. This is the nuclear power plant that produces 10% of our electricity. Did you know that? Like, here's me in a hard hat, right? Like,
The dosimeter.
That would be
Right.
great. for
yeah,
that.
I mean, maybe I don't want to post that, but, I think that those are the,
50s Geiger counters.
yeah.
No, because you.
Nobody hug me when I come back to
I think,
watch.
yeah, I think it's actually a good thing to show the dosimeter because it's like 2 rads, I think, or my millirads.
It's safer than.
Yeah, it's safer than walking
Than
by a
like-
pile of dirt.
Flying,
Yeah, safer
an
than flying
airplane.
for sure.
Yeah.
Safer than walking, yeah, there's piles of dirt that have higher dosage
Mhm.
than the columbia generators.
So can I offer something that like my media policy at Ant? We do something, we call it a bucket strategy, where, because we're popcorning ideas. So the bucket strategy is that we, one bucket could be informational, educational. One could just be like, at Ant, they're just cute stories, right? You take a photo of an animal, cute fluffy stories, a lot of fluff. You can have commissioner updates, you can have staff updates. So you create these bucket strategies of stuff that you want to say. Educational would be historical, informational would be outages, that sort of thing and then you decide how much of what communication you want for each bucket, right? So like, informational, maybe 20% of the bucket. So that we can decide what those buckets are and how much we want for each one.
I think that's like, I just had written down before that, like, even if it were like sort of like 2 operational pictures a month and like 2 commissioner posts a month, that would add up over time. And I think if we're doing Instagram, for example, with no comments even, then we sort of have like a photo album, oh, here's Chris and I tree planting at the NC event.
Yeah,
You know,
as long as it's
here's-
send only, I think so Instagram could be done that way, that it's send only.
Yeah, you
No
can,
comments, yeah.
all you can do, I think with Instagram, I don't spend very much time on social media, so, but I think with Instagram, you can just heart things, you just like it, and you can turn comments off.
You can do that on
So-
Facebook.
I mean,
Yeah,
to
that's true.
me, that would essentially be like us kind of creating a photo album with a short caption for each photo that's just, here's what we're doing, like, here's Andrew celebrating that he got a call from the Washington State Broadband Office, so, and I mean, 4 posts a month, but, that'd be, we'd have quite a bit of content after a few years that people
Right.
could look back on.
Admit my complete ignorance here. So on Instagram, can you go in and sort? Like do it, if you want to look at somebody's Instagram, can you go, I want it chronologically, I want it by topic?
It's
And-
chronological.
It's strictly chronological.
Yeah, you can create like little story kind of books up at the top where it'll say just operations and you can click on that and can have all the photos of operational type stuff or informational. You can create these little, I don't know. what they
I was
call
just
them.
thinking back to your
Yeah.
bucket idea. Is
Yeah.
there some way we could segregate that out so people could actually look at what, because what I wrote down was the 2 things that you want to incent people when they come and look, either at your website or any other social media. Why would you want to work for us?
Mhm,
Right? Or, and then why would you want to be our customer?
mhm, right,
I mean, that's it. And if somebody says, yeah, I do want to work for them, or gosh, I'm not their customer, I'd like to be their customer.
mhm,
Yeah.
That's the
So
acid
that's-
test.
And to make, to really drive that home, I think that's why we do need to come up with a narrative. So that when we're taking a picture, we're thinking about this, how does this fit within the narrative?
We kind of have a narrative established because we have a mission statement.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And maybe that's what we say,
yeah,
maybe that's what we do it based on the strategic plan.
yeah.
I'm gonna just give us each a copy of this.
Yeah, for
because I
review.
think,
Great.
So this is a really good discussion. And I think that, what I'm hearing is, you look at a communication plan and you want to identify goals. And I've heard some general goals. You want to identify your key audiences, and it simply stated it's the general public, and there may be targeted agencies or groups. Identifying key messages, and it's really your activities that you're doing stemming from the strategic plan. What we really need is the tactical outreach plan. And Christine, you're saying, 2 a month, 2 photos, 2 stories a month, work through the staff and commission, utilize the various media that we have available in a controlled fashion to outwardly extend our stories without comments. I think, this isn't a wrap-up point, but I think that's something Chris, Ann, and I can coalesce around some kind of summary plan that we can give you to look at and bless. I would say it's probably a dynamic plan. It's not a policy number 21 kind of thing. It's more of a dynamic plan that's going to be adaptive as issues arise and, things slow in the summer, or, all of a sudden you have the NC program you're doing, and maybe, you have, staff and commissioner out with the NC data site, and you talk about how you've supported NC over time. And that's either it's a video on YouTube or a photo somewhere, it's a short press release. And, and then the next month you look at what other things are on the deck, and you just have to, Chris has to look at allocating time and resources to that and where the budget is, but that's a total different scope than what I saw as a social media plan, which was, that would be elements of, but then, kind of this full-on constant blast and communications through 4 or 5 or 7, 10 social media mediums that you then have to monitor and control. That's kind of this is just doing strategic press releases on a regular plan basis.
yeah,
Which
it's
is
basically
communications
just photos, really, and short narrative. And I think if and when we have retail customers, for example, that's when, Chris, you'd be like, okay, we need a Twitter account because people need to figure out when we have outages right away. But that can happen you know,
Yeah. Well, I
in
mean,
response to that change.
if we went to 100,000 customers day one, you wouldn't use Twitter for that. You'd have a full-blown outage management system and people would be able to log on and find out their customer account status.
Yeah.
That's how you handle that.
Right.
But if you're 10,000 customers, it's a perfect way to do it is social media.
Right, and again, I mean, I'm also just having so many, like the picture of you with the bill signing for Joe Timmons, bill, you know, those are, I think all of these are just
Good
sort of
opportunities, yeah.
opportunity, yeah, things that we could have, you know, we still can
We still
post them
can,
if
yeah.
we want to, but yeah, I mean, to me, that's all we need right now, given the scope of our operations. That's my opinion. I don't know. if
I have one other item, but I agree that within the context of what we're talking about, what I have thoughts about is, I'll just wait and talk about it now, is improving how we do discovery. But that's a big subject,
What do you mean discovery?
meaning how we understand what the wants and needs of the public are as it relates to our mission.
Okay.
And you know, that's maybe better done through surveys and focus groups. And with you know, the way that social media is plagued as far as random acts of feedback,
Yeah.
that we've experienced at this meeting.
Well, and the other thing that I have found is, when we were doing some stuff in Kentucky, and I know the same problem in Snohomish when they had a Facebook account down there. You would get a lot of your feedback would come from people who aren't even in the county or even in the state.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then it's kind of like, well, there's somebody with an axe to grind on this issue.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah,
And I've
Yeah.
seen that.
Yeah.
times again on
Seems like
social
school
media.
districts are having that.
yeah, I
Yes.
think they are.
Yeah. That's great. I think
I
you're right.
represent Lincoln
Surveys.
School district all the time, just so you know. Just kidding.
Oh, the Blaine School District's getting it too. So who would, I have two questions. The who, right? The great ideas, and even in narrow in scope, it still requires somebody to sit down and write a post.
Mhm.
And I, like, I'm a firm believer, and people will have different opinions, I'm sure, that your media should be managed by an administrator and maybe one other person, but you never give your media, you know, it's really risky to have multiple hands on media, and then it also destroys sort of that, we should have a cohesive voice for our media. And it's always apparent when there's multiple people that are posting different things. It always, you can always tell. And if with our own media, if somebody else has to write a post and they sign their name, right? So that other people know, like, oh, this post was done by whoever. So the who is going to be tricky. Because we don't have a social media person, and
No.
that's, I mean, that's up to you, right?
I was gonna say that's the mechanics of
Yeah.
it, and you know, we're a small enough organization that the buck does stop here.
Yeah,
So I can be the ultimate person that signs off on each one of these things, but we just need to go through the mechanics of how to do that. That's pretty straightforward.
okay. And my other question, and you, Christine, you touched base on it for just a second, is this personal social media. So like, you know, a lot of other elected officials will have like, you know, council member Arnett or Commissioner Arnett, and then they share things. And I've been so cautious in this role that I've not even shared things that I want to share on my social media about, like, you know, we got this grant, yay, you know, we're all really excited. And because I don't have a framework for that yet, you know, should I be sharing that on my own social media? I'm a blue check social media user. Like, you know, I want to share those things because there's a lot of people that would have eyes on it. But so that's a you question, John. You know, should we have our own, or can we share it to our own personal pages? What's it's a public
So-
record.
There-
That's exactly right.
This is going to be muddled and gray and no real clear answer, because every time these questions come up and get litigated, they're very fact specific. So they're, in essence, a commissioner in this context is an employee of the district.
Mhm.
And so when you post something, whether it's on your personal site, whether it's a personal site that you created as Commissioner Arnett, different from your individual Jamie Arnett social media stuff. If you're posting that is in your scope of the appointment, where that would be where you're conducting the public business and it furthers the agency interest, real precise concept there. You know,
Mhm.
furthers the agency interest. So if you're out promoting what you've done, then that arguably is promoting the agency's business. So that is a public record that needs to be retained. And so, you know, what would be a best practice is scalable. Don't do anything is the easiest. But it's
Which is
not
what I think all of us have
functional.
done.
It is not always functional in today's world, and I think it's the tension you're running up against. You
But
know,
I
another
think if-
level might
if
be, you
you
say,
post
well,
something-
pardon?
Well, I was just gonna say, if you post something and you have a personal mechanism to retain it, so that if it's ever requested in a public records request, you can produce it. I think that would kind of satisfy that piece of it.
Mhm.
But you guys would all have to know, don't ever go on each other's social media account and say anything.
Oh, yeah,
Because that's a quorum.
That's a meeting.
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And if they-
you know, then you might say, an intermediate step might be to say, I'm gonna have my Commissioner Grant social media
Not even
page.
like, actually. Not even liking another commissioner's.
Right, you can't do that.
Can't even
because
like it.
that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
In relation to
Any
PUD
PUD
business,
related,
yeah.
But yeah.
I like your dog is different than I like your comment about what we've been doing and at the district.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
But, you know,
city's
you
got
might
in
have-
trouble about that.
You might have the Commissioner Grant might say, I'm gonna have my dedicated page for as Commissioner, PUD Commissioner Grant, social media page. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. And then I'm gonna have my Christine Grant personal where I'm sharing notes with my cousins and families.
Yeah.
And never do the two meet.
Mhm.
And that might be an intermediate, and then your friends start populating your Commissioner Grant page, and then you just make sure we keep that segregated. You make sure you keep that segregated, so if we get a request. The downside of that is, you know, what happens if someone starts, you know, making the untoward, inappropriate, threatening, violent, sexual, whatever kind of post or comment might be, you can't sit there and take that off because those become records once they post them on when you create an account for Commissioner Grant. So those
Right.
we need to, so it's very difficult, and these are kind of the tensions that get confronted, and there's no, this is the right way to do it. It's what works, but then how do we manage the issues?
And thank you, John. And just kind of speaking for myself, once I had a Facebook page for my campaign and everything. And then as soon as I started talking to John about this, I just decided I don't want to be, this isn't something I want to manage. I guess a thought that I had, and I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall here, is that, just from being in the community, you know, and in your role, Jamie, I know that this is a really strong skill set for you, with your abilities on communication and social media. And, you know, I know we also recently talked about our per diem policy, and I want to acknowledge that doing social media takes a lot of time and energy. And so I guess one question I had also, and you might not have time for this, so but I mean, and you were talking about that unified voice. And, you know, I think you have a really great, like I hardly ever go on social media, but whenever I do, I always get your posts for some reason. I don't like them. Don't worry. I just lurk.
so you like them, but
yeah.
you don't like them, yeah.
But, you know, is there a way that we can sort of formalize one of the commissioners' involvement in our social media channel? So we have that unified voice, or I don't know, I'm just kind of throwing that out there. Is there a way that we could utilize the commission's skill on this, acknowledging that we have limited staff time and that this is a representation partially of, you know, what the commission's doing? You know, am I making sense?
Yeah, I just don't know if it's best practice. So,
Yeah.
you know, I
Yeah.
have no idea.
I'm not so worried about that. I was just thinking through the mechanics of it, then the answer I think would be yes.
Okay,
Yeah, but what if you post a picture? How, you can't send a picture to Jamie.
I
No,
can send it to
me.
Send it-
Chris,
yeah.
and Chris and Jamie could
We could
get
make a
together
decision
and they could
yeah.
schedule 4 posts,
Yeah.
you know, a month
And
together.
there'd be no
and then
communication
Jamie
back
could
until
charge a
it's
per
just
diem
posted.
for it.
Yeah.
But not that I don't think Chris has a great social media
No,
voice,
I'm
but.
Hey, I am not claiming a skill set there, okay?
So I have a sense that this is something that will evolve and will grow into.
Okay.
In the sense that, you know, let's start with a program and some direction of a simple communication plan of trying to have 2 written press releases or posts, 2 picture related video or photographic posts a month, you know, on 2 or 3 different platforms, and then see how that's working. How does they get drafted, reviewed? Then we can say, okay, how do we improve upon that, expand upon it? What's been the flaws? I don't know that it's something we're gonna have, you know, the angel in the first go round, right? You know, it may be something we need to evolve into and develop over time.
Well, I would suggest just starting with a single channel.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you guys want, but
Probably Facebook, because I don't mean this poorly, but it has an older group of people. Instagram is sort of younger, TikTok is even younger.
Yeah.
So the people that are really gonna be interested are probably your Facebook users in this moment. You know, 10 years from now, it might be Instagram, we'll see. But if you start with one, that is the one that I would start with, just based off of demographics.
so then the mechanics of it, if you guys want to leave that to me, we need to do stuff with the firewall. There's got to be, you know, we're gonna have to have an authorized user and
Right.
we're gonna have to do some stuff around that, but
Right.
like I said, that is the mechanics of it. And so what I'm hearing is that we really want 4 posts a month. And they would probably be photo based, but the issue would be 2 from commissioners. And it could be commissioners involved in operations. I mean, it could be anything. And then 2 that are directly from operations. And I think we do enough cool stuff.
yeah.
You know, the Frazzle Ice would have been a great one.
Yeah,
Cool.
yes.
You know, and that could even be a full YouTube, you know, video. Hey, look when the Nook Sack turned into a slushy. We call it Frazzle Ice. And, you know, here's what it looks like. Well, that could have been fun.
Yeah.
We could have done a TikTok with Basil Rock.
Yeah, we could have done that. No,
You know what I'm talking about, Steve. Steve got the joke.
I did too.
Mhm. There was a kid's show called Fraggle Rock.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
She got it on reruns, 20-year-old reruns.
Okay, and then so what about, this question of. Who's writing the posts? How do we have that unified voice? How do we kind of get the voice right?
Well, I think, Jamie, if you're willing to,
Yeah. I'm
I'll
willing.
just work with you
Yeah.
and I'll make sure that every post goes through Jamie.
Okay,
She at least approves it and says, yep, go with that, no, try this. And we'll just,
and
you know,
can
like John
we,
said, we'll evolve.
can we make sure that that meeting? Jamie can bill a per diem for that. I mean, technically having a meeting with the general manager to prepare
Yeah.
for a commission meeting counts, but can we just have that meeting? be-
Understood.
Well, anytime you meet with GM, it can be, you know, depending on duration and all that, but it can be built.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Does
and
that feel okay? to
Yeah,
you?
no, that's fine with me. I
Are
mean,
you sure?
we can manage 4 posts a month.
Okay.
Yeah, I do want to explore with the commission though, like, before we get started, it sounds like you're right. We've got a basic understanding, 4 posts a month. I do want to talk about what those buckets might look like specifically for us though.
Hmm.
So, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is just how we operate social media. Is that we fill these buckets, that there has to be a good balance of like an informational or educational aspect, like the Frazzle Ice would be a wonderful, you know, informational, educational bucket versus like, you know, you with a hard hat, you know, like there has to be a good. I wrote down informational as a bucket, educational, commissioner stories, staff stories. So I don't know if you want to explore that more or we just want to wing it.
I
I
would
don't like
want to have
looking
some
at them.
balance between water, energy and broadband.
Water, energy and so
That's
those are good
buckets.
buckets. Yeah.
Mhm. Those are good buckets. Yeah. And some are gonna span all of them, right? Like if we took a picture of us at like PUD Day on the Hill, like giving out coffee or whatever, that would be kind of all
Yeah,
three, but
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you just create these buckets so that one thing doesn't get sort of hammered on all of the time. You know, you don't go stale, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to just read a history page of the
Right.
PUD. Nobody just wants to look at, a one commissioner's story over and over again. And I think using water, energy and broadband as sort of buckets, and then we can go from the operational standpoint for each of those and a commissioner standpoint for each of those buckets. We just have to make sure the buckets get filled.
And I think that we can also, now that we have this going, we can provide Chris with more content than you guys might select, right? Like, here's a picture with like a caption of what I'm doing, and maybe you guys decide like, that doesn't really rise to the top, but
It's not
yeah.
a disaster if we post 5 in a month.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's not, yeah,
So-
yeah.
I also think that part of why I think having somebody like you, Jamie, that does this professionally is that I think you will be able to kind of have that judgment call of like, is this kind of helping tell, our story about what the mission we're
Yeah,
pursuing
it's
or
really, alignment with the mission.
not. And now I'm really excited to take a picture of us at the salmon ceremony.
Yeah, tomorrow, I think.
So.
No, it's
Oh,
Thursday.
there you go. Oh, yeah.
It's Thursday.
Oh, it's Thursday.
Oh, I still can.
Okay.
I just make my house move in.
Jody is going.
Because Zephyr's going to. Well, I feel like, are those enough buckets?
Those
now?
are
Okay.
those plenty of buckets.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to have a lot of buckets. We just have to make sure that we manage between.
Yeah, and I think that, having the kind of operations staff perspective and the commissioner perspective, and I think. Always going back to this, here's us trying to pursue our mission. And then also maybe the sort of secondary business case of, look at what a great place to work
Mhm.
this is, And do you want to be our customer?
Mhm.
Or we're eager and enthusiastic about serving our community.
Yeah. And I think Instagram is actually better so they're not quite the same, right?
Yeah.
Facebook and Instagram, they have different things that appeal to them. Instagram, it would in some ways offer some better content because you can do those like key stories where it would say, do you want to work here at the PUD? And people can click on that and you can go through this like album of different things. So we'll get it. We'll start with Facebook. We'll get into that next.
Mhm.
But
I
does
think
help.
I think another channel we might want to think about going forward, I think, either Facebook or Instagram right now makes a lot of sense, and we don't have the budget to go any bigger than that, but I do also think LinkedIn could be another channel that could be worth looking at in the future, just for
That's more looking
recruitment.
for employees rather than
Yeah.
the community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the things that, looking at the very helpful questions that Johnson prepared, I want to make sure that we think about public records and how
yeah,
we're doing it. And so I'm also curious, and you've been listening to this conversation. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on where we're at?
There's a lot involved on the flip side.
Yeah.
Not just what goes out on front in social media, but how it's captured, how it's retained. If we get a public records request. I have a lot of concerns about it. So I'm not,
About public records?
about social media and public records.
even
So-
if we're not intermingling, if we just have one
it-
main.
It's still a
Page.
public record. And it has
Well,
to,
I-
be
yeah, I
right, it has to be
understand that, yeah.
captured, has to be retained. We'll probably need to we'll have to find a company that does that. There are out there that capture and retain.
Let's find out what it takes to do that.
Well, there's some work necessary and,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it may be that it's a service we have to provide, have to hire out. There may be some function in Facebook I don't have a clue. That allows you to periodically save everything that's on there to some third file. I don't know.
I don't
Put it
know.
on a fund drive. I don't know.
Archiving.
Yeah,
There is a function where you can get all of your information from Facebook, everything that you've ever posted.
well, remember,
Yeah.
we've got to secure that against a Facebook server failure. So we're gonna need
So we're
to,
not off the hook if it's. a server
Right.
fails.
right,
That's right.
that's the problem.
No, they're not gonna.
So we have to not rely on their
Sure.
technology for that.
That's absolutely right. You have to independently manage your site and these records.
Can you ask at your conference that you're at, which service?
We're gonna
other
have a
people-
roundtable
My guess
tomorrow.
is that most
Yes.
people are not doing.
Doing it
I-
right. They're
yeah,
probably
they
not
are.
doing it.
Oh,
Other
really?
This is
PDs
perfect.
all have social media capture.
They do?
They
Oh,
do.
okay.
There's
They have
3 or 4
certificate, yeah.
companies.
Yeah, and they have staffs.
I've
that
done
oversee those.
survey, I've asked for the
Okay.
information, all of that.
Did they give you company names
Mhm.
for people? Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I've already talked to one
okay.
to find out how to go about
Okay.
it and
Did
what
they,
the
I mean,
startup costs are.
did they give you an idea what the costs are
It was around $1,000
for a month?
for a year.
A
I
year,
mean, it's not that expensive.
so they can
so-
do that. And were they talking specifically about Facebook?
It
or-
was just for Facebook.
Okay. Well, yeah,
This,
so it can be, and how do they do it? Do they periodically go in and scrape or do they?
I'm not exactly sure how it works.
I'm just wondering if there's like a time lag where you could have, you know. And a part of it is, you know, somebody, if Facebook failure, if their servers go down, the data's lost. And it's been a week since the last update. I'm kind of okay with saying, here's everything but this last week where it failed.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's gonna be some data gap if they periodically do it. And that may just be as good as it gets, because that would be the same if we're saving them.
Yeah.
There's gonna be, you know, if it drops out overnight, you're done.
Let's understand what we're talking about too. We're talking about 2 to 4 posts a month without an ability to comment.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So, you know, that's not a significant data packet that's gonna have to be saved. It's gonna have to be regularly secured. But you know, if we have that same record here, and you have a company $1,000 a year just on every 2-week or monthly basis, you know, saving it on some offload server, we'll have easily to maintain that record. It's when you start really opening it up to comments and dialogues and you're relying on the terms of service of Facebook or TikTok that don't have a retention requirement in their agreements, nor privacy requirements, that you really need these separate servers, separate entities to retain these records. But we're not
So how-
talking, this is the
Go ahead.
difference between to me, a communication plan versus a social media program where you have 3 or 4 social media mediums that you've opened. And anybody can participate like a public forum. And now we're really having a problem managing what everyone posts, how everyone responds, and then retaining all the vast public commentary that might come in a public forum. But since we've narrowly scoped this, I think the magnitude of this is much less than what it could be.
How would you recommend capturing?
Well, I think, you
If
know,
Don't
I
have
think-
if we don't have a company.
well, I'm not saying we don't
Well-
use the company. The company's still fine, but the order of magnitude is much less than having 5 different social media mediums, each with public forums that we have to track. It's a much different scale of issue of management. So whether we say, here's a
Well-
list that we post and we have it in paper copy and we have a digital, and they want to get the Facebook post when we've had this company surveil it and retain it, great. If $1,000 a year, that's kind of eyewash and probably in the scheme of the budget.
well, I'm also thinking that if we have a finite number of posts, so we're not doing like 500 posts a day or anything.
That's my point.
Then,
Order
you
of
know,
magnitude's 4 a month, so we're not,
yeah, if we're even doing those, I don't know, Jamie, whether you'd recommend drip, 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 or, you know, twice a month you do 2. But either way, if it's only 4 a month, then, you know, we just have them scrape it every Friday. And then we know we've got it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're doing 4, let's just do 1 a week, right? So that we know what when we had a post. I'll reach out though, Riley Sweeney from the City of Ferndale Communications, like, I'm gonna reach out to him after the meeting and just see
Yeah.
what they're doing.
They're very good.
Yeah. But they're much different than us because they are interacting with the public and they put out silly posts that people get really mad about.
April
It's like,
Fool's
yeah.
joke, right?
Yeah, so and we'll never be engaging people in that way.
Chris
Never say never.
He didn't approve my April Fool's joke.
What's that?
He didn't approve my April Fool's joke.
No, I did not.
You know what my April Fool's joke was?
Announcing this.
Yeah.
I think we should stay away from April Fool's Day jokes.
Yeah.
They don't seem to go over well.
No, somebody always takes a joke badly nowadays.
No, everybody takes themselves seriously now.
Yeah, I think that we should just stay away from most things controversial. We don't have to do that. We don't have to engage in
Well, yeah, we don't have to.
super, yeah.
We're about energy, telecom and
Yeah.
water. What can be controversial?
Well, some things.
All those things, all those
What could possibly be
All right,
controversial
I'll
about
keep my
that?
day job.
So, Chris, John, Ann, do you have any questions for us?
No, I think we've
Keep
got
the
some
scope
direction.
narrow coming from Ann.
Narrow as can be.
Yeah.
Collect these. Must be.
Oh,
No, I mean.
I have one.
I have
now.
one at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just.
It's nice, it is nice to have them here.
Yeah.
Even for a meeting.
Did you finish we brought up the one thing, but you said you had a few concerns and then we just addressed one. Were there other concerns? Outside of public records?
Not in particular.
Okay,
Well, I think I did, my conversations that Ann and I have talked, it's when you open it up to the public forum and what do people post? How, what happens if it's the threatening or violent or,
right,
sexual, whatever.
right.
Just inappropriate, yeah.
Yeah, a whole range of inappropriate.
Those were some of the things that Ann and I were struggling with. What happens if you mix campaign and candidate and elected commissioner? That becomes a problem, not more so maybe for the commissioner than the district, but things we talked through and some of those things Ann and I talked about were on those lists of other considerations. And I think we're controlled that by limiting the openness of the dialogue.
Okay, then, well, if there's no further business, let's call the meeting to close. Okay, great,
Good.
meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all.
Get back to
See you
saving
next
cats.
week.
Back to saving cats.
Thank you.